First of all, introduce us. This is Absinthia Vermut. My name is Ted Breaux. A little bit about you.
A little bit about me.
Yes.
So I studied photography and art history in college, and when I had Absinthe at a party in 1996, I was afraid of it and got on my nerve.
In 1996.
In 1996, totally. Got on my nerve, tried it, absolutely fell in love with it, and started researching it through the art history, which is really what drew me into Absinthe in the first place. Got the recipe, was supposedly from a family in the French countryside. You tell me, it was Everclear food coloring and some wormwood and anise tinctures.
Antique recipe, such a 1990s antique recipe.
Right. So very quickly, I started having friends up in Northern California grow me the ingredients on organic farms, and was just really experimenting with it and researching vintage recipes. And ever since then, pretty much always used organic ingredients. Had the organic logo on my first batch and didn't want to deal with that organization. So my absinthes are made with vintage Swiss recipes and all organic ingredients in Northern California.
Okay, my name is Ted Breaux. I'm a research scientist from New Orleans. I take it everybody's been there at some point in time. You walk past the old Absinthe house on Bourbon Street.
Yes.
Okay, that's been operating since 1874. That was one of the things that got my attention in 1993. I've been studying absinthe since 1994. Problem is, when I started studying absinthe, there was no absinthe to study. In 2000, I became the first person to actually analyze samples of antique absinthe drawn from full sealed bottles representing the best brands of the 19th century. Co-authored 2 published scientific studies on the composition of vintage absinthe. I use that information to reverse engineer original brands, which I started doing in France commercially in January of 2004. We got the ban on absinthe. USA had a 95-year ban on absinthe. We got lifted on March 5th, 2007. Lucid Absinthe Superior, which is one of the cups you have in front of you, was the first genuine absinthe in the US. And since then, I've been basically, most of my life is education on absinthe. Because who here can tell me how gin is made? How about bourbon? How about absinthe? You see? So it doesn't matter where I go, that's always the situation. So
I also want to point out, he said the ban was lifted on absinthe. Turns out, from what he discovered scientifically, it's been legal since the repeal of the prohibition. It was never technically illegal, we just didn't understand the science.
yeah, I mean, it was specifically banned in 1912, but actually when the FDA was created in 1968, when they created food and beverage laws, technically it had been, but it doesn't matter because the TTB can tell you no. You cannot bring anything into this country until it is approved by the TTB. Doesn't matter where it comes from, here, abroad, whatever. And the TTB has a latitude to just say, no, they can do that. So, and they did. Whoops.
Well, I have a question.
Yes.
Your name is Absinthia?
So yeah, I'll tell that story where you would deal with the tech. When I served those first bootleg bottles of absinthe to my friends on April Fool's Day 1997,
Yeah.
my friends started calling me Absinthe as a joke.
Okay.
And the next day on an email list, it was like, no one may ever call her anything else ever again, and so it stuck. But it was a few years later that I discovered that my last name, Vermut, which is on my birth certificate, is actually German for wormwood. And this deck shows the image that like opened my eyes to that. So yes, I am Absinthia Vermut.
That's so dope.
That's really
cool.
That is cool.
All right, start with this antique postcard. You see, this is how your road to ruin starts. First of all, it all starts as something as innocent as lemonade, and then you want cherries, and then it becomes a claret cup, and then you graduate to beer, small first, and then schooner, and then it's off to cocktails, highball, and then it's whiskey. Many of you I know are already there. First it's a little, then a hooker, and then brandy, first a pony, and then a horn, and then your last step on the road is absinthe. Who has traveled this road? All right. Drinking absinthe can cause tremors, convulsions, death. This is one of the first references I found for absinthe when I looked it up first in 1993 in the Merck Index. And I was stunned by that. I was really, well, if it can do all this, and what's in it that makes this happen? And that's where the mystery really starts. Absinthe, what does the name absinthe mean? It comes from the name Artemisia absinthium, aka grand wormwood. A lot of people have never really seen it. Here's a big bag of it. I want you to know, I drove here to Louisville at great risk. carry this. So what I'm going to do is I will start. Yeah, can you imagine? I've been a lengthy traffic stop. And if you feel so inclined, you might want to take a tiny little pinch. If you feel so inclined, have a nibble.
So this is the poster I was talking about. It's in, when I was doing my absinthe research, Barnaby Conrad III had released his book, A History of Absinthe in a Bottle. And I was looking at this beautiful picture of Vermut, and I was like, that's how great grandpa spelled our last name. What's going on here?
Vermut.
Yeah.
Okay, and so what is it about Artemisia absinthium? It's a very medicinal herb. People ask me, what does it do? It is something that is believed to strengthen the digestive system and also impacts the nervous system. And the thing is, it's been used for a very, very long time as medicinal. The problem is, it's incredibly, incredibly bitter, okay? So, how does one remove bitterness? Well, this is a fancy way to do it. It's called distillation. The earliest record I find of distilling absinthe, specifically with anise seeds, is in Nicholas Culpeper's A Complete Herbal from 1653, which is basically an herbal medicine book. Okay? So the concept of distilling absinthe goes back quite a long ways, much longer than further back than the commercialization of the spirit. Now, if we look at any traditional gin, you always find two botanicals. There's juniper and what else? Give me the other one.
Coriander.
Coriander, exactly. With absinthe, there's always three. We refer to them as the Holy Trinity of absinthe. Absinthia,
They are green anise and its seeds, grand absinthe or Artemisia absinthium, and sweet fennel seeds.
correct. That is the basis of any absinthe. These are all very strong flavored botanicals. And when you soak them you put them in a pot of alcohol and you soak them, and that alcohol extracts the flavor and you distill them, what you get is something that's very perfuming. But whereas gin is traditionally gin clear, absinthe is traditionally what color?
Green.
Traditionally green. Why is that? Because somebody thought it'd be cool if it was green? Not exactly.
Does absinthe come out of still green?
No. Is it chlorophyll?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Boom.
But when you get the strongly flavored spirit, what's added to it are botanicals that tend to be softer in flavor, and basically it's made like an infusion, almost like tea. And this can be one of any of many, but three of the more common ones are petite absinthe, which is another species of wormwood used in vermouth. Another one is melissa, that you know as lemon balm, Melissa officinalis. And another one is hyssop, which is something that's better known in Europe. It's a bit like lavender, okay? And here's just some of the botanical, that's a field of grand absinthe. It does kind of look like cannabis from a distance. This is in France. Absinthe drying after being harvested. Showing Pimpinella anisum, green anise. Now, who recognizes this stuff?
Yes.
Well, that's star anise. That comes from Vietnam and China. Absinthia, is this used in absinthe typically?
Well, it's using one. That's a pretty big brand, but they're doing it wrong.
Thing is,
Boo-boo.
this has a different flavor than green anise. This comes from Vietnam and China. And oil of star anise is a commercial product. Comes in drums, big tanks, totes. And why is that used today for almost every anise flavored spirit you know? Sambuca, anise liqueurs, all that. Why is this the basis of all that?
It's cheaper.
Exactly. But it doesn't
tastes
taste
different.
the same. Tastes different, doesn't taste the same. Everybody knows
Same
sweet
with
fennel.
licorice. Licorice is not the same plant.
Yeah, licorice root doesn't even taste like we know as licorice. Petite absinthe, lemon balm, Melissa officinalis, hyssop. These are just some of the absinthe botanicals. Absinthe was traditionally, you know what? When you look at old adverts for like Angostura bitters, Fernet Branca, they're always associated with having medicinal benefits. Dyspepsia is a word that comes up, which is a fancy way of saying stomachache. And absinthe was basically one of these botanical medicines that happened to taste really good. And what France did in its Algerian wars is issue rations of absinthe to its soldiers in the field who were having problems with dysentery from unclean water. And it was said that if you add some absinthe to water, it makes it clean enough to drink. Big mistake. Because the French soldiers soon realized that adding a little water to absinthe was a lot more fun. And this poster makes fun of the absinthe military. because the French military definitely developed a taste for absinthe. But we know that even pretty early on, absinthe was exported. The earliest New Orleans importers stock list, where I've seen absinthe mentioned, is dated 1839 from the newspaper 1839. So it definitely started getting around. And then the French had this fantastic theory about alcohol. It's good and bad alcohol. Are you aware of that? You see, good alcohol comes from grapes, like wine, cider, from apples and pears, or beer. That's all good alcohol. Bad alcohol, comes from potatoes and sugar beets and distilling grain. And this proves the difference. If you give a guinea pig good alcohol, he just passes out, wakes up, he's fine. If you give him bad alcohol, he'll have an epileptic crisis and die. So all that whiskey you've been drinking, it's bad alcohol. Okay? You've been forewarned. But the thing is, because absinthe was traditionally made from wine spirit, which was the cleanest commercial spirit one could buy in the mid-1800s, and wine was said to, believed to be good for health, not injurious for health, and wine spirit the same. So, all brandy had a free pass. Basically, it was deemed to be healthy, a healthy tipple. And what better, and before Facebook, when you had to go to the cafe and meet people to socialize, people did. And this is kind of where happy hour was formed, because after work, people go to the cafes and have their daily medicine.
The green hour, there.
The green hour. This is a U.S., an American journalist depiction of the cafe culture in France, showing these distinguished gentlemen. But no, it wasn't just a gentleman's game. We had the bavous of the Latin Quarter. Oh yes, she knows how to party. She's showing us how to do it. Yeah. I love this old postcard.
Yes.
All here, like grandfather, child imitators. And then of course this brand, showing how smooth it was, even cats would drink it.
Like, yeah.
Getting off that glass off the table.
What everyone's dog likes at the end of a hard day is a pipe and a glass of absinthe. It's before Photoshop. Yeah.
That was a hard day.
Yeah.
So question on this.
Yes.
My old work used to have that dispenser, and I forget the name for the absinthe.
Yes, absinthe fountain. We're getting to that.
Yes, but why is in the upper vessel clear and then the product?
We will explain
We'll
that.
get to that.
We
Yes.
can't wait to tell you.
Thank you.
See,
Patiently waiting.
bartenders in France had it very easy back in the day, because basically if one went to the bar, ordered an absinthe, okay, or told the wait staff, send me an absinthe. What they got was a glass of liquid, just like what you got in front of you. You got a glass with a shot in it, and that was it, because it was absinthe was never had neat, and it was always up to the person to finish a drink the way they like. Absinthe is not a liqueur. Absinthia, what is a liqueur?
It's a spirit made with sugar in the bottle.
And absinthe was never made with sugar in the bottle. Never, ever, ever. And I say that because there have been some posers in recent years that have done exactly that. Absinthe never made with sugar in the bottle. Now, sometimes people, might use, this is an antique, this pretty much useless implement does have one important task, and that is to perch a sugar cube on top of glass, like so. Oh, some of the early glasses were made in uranium glass, so I have to show this to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
So remember that back in the day, sugar was new, it was trendy. They had no idea that had, bad health benefits to it. It was really, really cool, and so they put it in pretty much everything, including their absinthe, their bedside water, wherever they could have sugar.
Yep, so it was a thing. And here we see in the postcard showing us how to prepare an absinthe. She's got 2 lumps of sugar she's putting on that spoon. She's got a shot of absinthe in the glass. She's dribbling ice water through it. Just until it becomes completely cloudy. The art of making an absinthe, and voila. Yep. And then we have the male point of view. I love the date here, March 1906.
That's what I'm saying, we should have seen one before that.
Then we have the male point of view, the aperitif.
Glass.
Yeah, so he's doing this. And the taste is very smooth and delicious is the translation. And it says, this certain moment, my heart is filled with joy.
I'm feeling myself.
But then we get to the contemplative stage, and then eventually end up here.
1:30.
Absinthism.
Was this like an ad campaign that was supposed to get
It
you?
was a little. So the thing is, before this was a set of postcards that you bought, and it was a sequence that told the story. So you'd send whoever you're writing to one at a time, and eventually you get the whole thing.
Yeah, postcards and posters are a really interesting way to see advertising from way back when.
Okay.
See the tone change.
Real quick question, where did the sugar come from?
Where did it come from?
Like you said, it was new, it was trendy, where, like.
Oh, sugar plantations,
Yeah.
or in Europe also eventually sugar beets
Yes.
kind of thing.
Like the
So,
Faroe Islands.
yeah. So
Okay.
originally sugar plantations, and basically that made a lot of colonial possessions very valuable. But like modern day, like sugar in Europe is sugar beet. So what we're going to do, let's go ahead and get started. You see the cup all the way to your left that has a bluish liquid. Absinthia, why is this blue? You want to explain that?
Yeah, so I, for years, have been wanting to make an absinthe with butterfly pea flower.
Awesome.
I started arguing with the FDA in 2001. Why are you allowing it to import alcohol but not domestic alcohol? How exactly are you helping American business? Well, typical federal story in America, some corporation was suing somebody, they couldn't give me all the details. But they finally allowed it. So this is the same base as the Absinthe Vert, my green absinthe, which is just to your right. But instead of coloring it in herbs, we add some butterfly pea flower extract. And I call my absinthe bleu, B-L-E-U-E, which is French for blue. I also have an absinthe blanche, the clear absinthe that's not colored green, which was very popular during the ban, because if you didn't color your absinthe green, nobody knew what it was. So you can call your blanche, your clear absinthe blanche or blue. And so this is my blue with the butterfly pea flower, so it's a little play on the names.
So what you'll want to do is you'll want to add just everybody's got water in front of
I
them.
would say take a little sip of it neat, just to
Yeah.
get the flavor. And then add some water to it, have a taste of that.
Just
and
a
then
little.
add the lemon. I'm sure everyone here has played with that blue Empress gin with butterfly pea flower. You see how lavender it turns? Yeah, it's really pretty.
So just a little water. You can always add a little more, but you can't take it away. Don't add too much. If you do, it becomes flat.
You can always add more, you can't add less.
Can't add less. Excuse me. So you asked me about the absinthe fountain. And it's called an absinthe fountain, but it's really not an absinthe fountain at all. It's a fancy ice water dispenser.
Or
And the-
nature.
The water fountain for
Yeah,
absinthe.
right. And this is an original.
Right?
A nature.
Oh, like
I mean, because it's one in the water, it's leach, right?
Louche.
Louche. Louche.
Thank you.
No, leech are those things that you go, leech bowl.
L-O-U-C-H.
Yes,
Correct.
Louche.
Yes.
Yes. So right, and the thing about these is basically because everybody finished absinthe the way that they wanted. They had access. They would be given like sugar cubes. They might have had a carafe of ice water. But in a posh place, you would have seen these, especially like in the center of a round table, where everyone could they would just turn a spigot, and basically that would start a drip of water, so it was hands-free, which is kind of nice after you've had 2 or 3. And because these were always operated by patrons, there's not a whole lot antiques around. Because many of them were smashed. So mine doesn't leave the house.
Because people were drunk.
People were drunk. And they're very easy to knock over.
Yeah, they're made out of glass.
Oh,
Very top heavy, so
Yes.
that makes sense.
yes.
Right, right.
Don't light it on fire.
Absinthe, would you explain this, please?
Well, every time you light your absinthe on fire, a green fairy somewhere dies. No, really. Again, I'm going to talk about sugar. I feel that sugar and fire are a way of masking a poorly crafted absinthe. Your absinthe should taste good without either one of those.
Yeah, this got started in the Czech Republic in the 1990s. You're not going to find any old drawing or painting or written description of anyone lighting up sugar.
It was created to sell bad absinthe.
Yeah, right. Basically vodka that was
Colored green.
colored green and
Thrown a
sold
little
as
ice in
absinthe.
there.
And that's a sad thing because products like that basically helped generate interest in absinthe, but also kill the category at the same time. Just so breeze through some of the wonderful advertising posters, usually showing women with absinthe.
So
having
again,
a
I
good
will
time.
mention the posters. You'll see the before and after. It's really interesting how the posters of absinthe changed over time.
Yeah, like this one's got the label that says Santé, healthy. Like the Renaissance doctor saying, yeah, this is good stuff. This is probably a shit brand, actually. This one I love. It's my cute sin. C'est mon péché mignon.
Oh, I love that face.
Yeah. Fantastic. I've seen the original
She's
one.
seen it,
I'd
she can't
like
really
to
see.
get my hands on the original. Yeah, this is one of the most famous ones. You know, some of these people that were associated with absinthe, basically, Toulouse-Lautrec, he was pretty crazy. He had a hollow cane that he would fill with absinthe and go to the burlesque clubs. and in the cabarets. And
Ben was ahead of his time.
Degas, yeah, he was nuts, and he used to layer like absinthe and chartreuse and grenadine, whatever. He'd make these cocktails called rainbow cups, he called them. And allegedly, he would mix absinthe and cognac together and call it a trembloteur, an earthquake.
Right. You'll still find the earthquake at some
Yeah.
bars.
Degas made like great paintings of ballerinas.
There's some
Yes,
beautiful
he
ones in
did.
New York
And he-
right now.
And he had family in New Orleans. He spent about 6 months there.
The Contrapasso was fantastic.
Degas.
Yeah.
And Oscar Wilde used to drink absinthe at the Cafe Royal in London.
He
And,
compared absinthe to a beautiful sunset.
yeah, what difference is there between a glass of absinthe and a sunset?
That's true.
I think he also equipped, he had like the best, Oscar Wilde was so far ahead of his time. He would say things like, it's important that you be yourself because everyone else is taken. Pablo Picasso was not himself an absinthe drinker, but he was a voyeur in the whole absinthe scene.
We've got incredible sculptures of absinthe spoons in Barcelona.
French poet Paul Verlaine was always so pissed on absinthe like he is here. I don't know how he ever wrote anything. And Van Gogh and Gauguin were flatmates. And Van Gogh had a lot of problems. People say, oh, he sliced his ear off when he got drunk on absinthe or whatever. He had a lot of problems.
The absinthe had nothing to do with the ear thing.
Right. So, actually, where Impressionism starts is with this painting by Edward Manet. This is a painting that was deemed such an abomination it couldn't be displayed at the art salon. They refused. Because everybody recognized this character as a beggar who used to hang out at the Louvre. And they just thought this was horrible. No, it was before long before Jack Ripper. Anyway,
Interesting thing about Manet is the shadows in his portraits never match the figure.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's what I like about this one.
Yeah. But everybody knows what's in this.
Yes, sir.
Right, and it was
That's
associated
right.
with this homeless guy.
Yeah, yeah. And tattered rags, like, with a bottle kicked over. Yeah. Oh, and Degas certainly made a mess of himself and his friend Marcelin Desputin, who's like, got a glass of coffee, smoking a pipe, something. But French actor Céline Andre, sitting there in a stupor.
She over it.
Yeah,
She caught a lot of help proposing for this because, of course, everybody recognizes what's in that glass.
The original's at the Met right now in New York. I saw it a few weeks ago.
Oh, is it?
Yeah,
Okay.
oh my God, it's so gorgeous.
At the MoMA or where?
At the Met.
At the Met.
Yeah, there's a Degas Manet show there right now.
And this is Toulouse-Lautrec depicting his friend, Vincent van Gogh, with a glass of absinthe. This is Vincent van Gogh, still alive, glass of absinthe. I mean, it just keeps appearing. Oh, that's yours truly, the grave of Van Gogh. I should have poured like a glass of absinthe into it.
And where's
Bertrand
that?
taking the cue from Degas, woman at the cafe, glass of absinthe, kind of sitting here in a contemplative stupor. Yeah, Magnon's Green Muse from 1895.
You guys can taste the next one. It's my Absinthe Therix.
Yeah, go ahead.
The one that was next to the blue. Taste it neat, pour a little water, look at it louche, and then taste that. Don't put lemon in this one though, it won't change other colors.
And this is Pablo Picasso's depiction of someone who's a very gaunt-looking character at late night at a cafe with a glass of absinthe. Picasso's friend, Angel Fernandez de Soto, glass of absinthe and a pipe. Very dark, very blue. Victor Oliva, Czech artist, the absinthe drinker. He lived in Paris, 1903. And I love Jean Barreau. His detail is amazing. The old uranium glass siphon. And I've seen people do that with like seltzer water and absinthe. Really interesting. Yeah. Okay, so where'd it all go wrong? So it was a psychiatrist, Dr. Mannion. He started noting that people that would turn up at the sanitariums were self-confessed absinthe drinkers. And so he came up with this, concocted this theory that chronic abuse of absinthe caused all sorts of problems, right? And looking through, I love this old medical journal from 1891 that claims absinthe produces drunken rages, normal alcohol produces calm drunkenness. You aware of that?
Calm drunkenness.
Yeah, this is real science here.
Yeah.
Came up with these experiments to show that absinthe was bad, And I love this one in which a guinea pig is injected with the equivalent of 200 glasses of absinthe.
Oh my God, he's gonna fuck me.
And
Yeah,
basically,
Yeah.
everything starts off, it's like, okay, what's going on?
Why would they go to 200?
And it's like, uh-oh, what happened?
To make their point.
Yeah, you see, and that proves that absinthe is bad. Why is absinthe bad? Well, the grand absinthe is a poison, you see, because it contains something called fujone, and the plot thickens. The thing is, if you want to make absinthe look bad, you find the one thing you find in it that you don't find in much of anything else. And then at the time, 1870s, 1880s, phylloxera ravaged the vineyards of Europe, and basically wine, anything made from grapes, like brandy, was expensive. And basically at that time, the column still was very much established. You could make good, clean alcohol from anything, not just grapes, and the popularity of absinthe just boomed. And now, not just to be done in Europe, this is the old Absinthe House in New Orleans, circa 1900. And if you've been in New Orleans, you'll notice it looks just as bad today.
Worse. Rent was significantly cheaper.
That's it. And then when you're ready to move on, so the next cup over is Lucid Absinthe Superior. That's absinthe I created about right around 2000, and we used that. That was the product that got the first approval for an absinthe in the U.S. market in 95 years. So same rules apply. Have a sip neat if you like, 62%, 124 proof. Add some ice water. Old Absinthe House, I like up here in the rafters, it says Absinthe Room. And one thing you'll notice that's unusual is you'll see on this bar are these two green and white marble fountains, absinthe fountains that were used with brass spigots. So they look like that. And today they look like that. Actually, no, they've since been restored
They have.
to operating use. They were originally plumbed to cypress wood rainwater collection tanks on the roof. And these were not actually, these were made in France. And they were made in France like mid-1800s, like 1830s, 1850s. But these were not intended to be absinthe fountains. I think I figured out that these fountains were right around the time that the Absinthe Room, as it was first known, became a bar. There was a place, cat a corner, called the Old French Opera House that was renovated. And these look like Napoleonic type water fountains. And I think that these were repurposed from the Old French Opera House, probably. And this is an old black and white piece of silent film that shows the old Absinthe House.
Oh, that's neat. Yep, looks the same.
And in it, I love that old sign.
That's so cool.
What year is this from? Do you know?
I'll lie to you, so I don't want to tell you.
Heard that.
This very young bartender.
Look at the wrist.
Give me this 25 seconds. Is that the wear from the water on the stove?
Yes,
That's awesome.
yeah, on the limestone. Look, oh, what do I do now? Well, serve it.
He did not bat an eye.
He was still in high school. He didn't know.
So basically, you probably heard of Absinthe. That was created post-prohibition as an absinthe substitute because absinthe was no longer available. And so there was really no reasonable substitute. So there's a whole range of cocktails that just didn't taste right if you tried to use like anisette. So that was created to be something that could mimic that flavor profile. Yes?
Wasn't it all also made to be a little bit more approachable to the people that were of the working class? Because absinthe was so expensive. That's what people have told me my whole life, or my whole career, I should say, in New Orleans. I don't know how true or untrue that is.
That was generally true, even in Europe. And the thing is, there was never a legal definition of absinthe. You can put anything in a bottle and call it absinthe,
Okay.
and that's a problem. Because
Right, still is.
yes, to produce absinthe properly, you need loads of botanicals, you need equipment, you need energy, you need labor, and you need time. And those things tend to make it expensive. But whenever something is expensive and it becomes popular, there's always a drive to do what? To make it cheap. And back then, it was caveat emptor, buyer beware, because there were no regulations. It was all, and people in France, for example, were very brand conscious when they bought absinthe. Those who could afford to be one. Thing is, well, we'll get to that in a minute, but absinthism, or these problems, never happened in North America. That's because the shit brands weren't exported here.
Right, so if you look at prohibition in this country, people got sick because alcohol in general wasn't being regulated. So as it turns out, if you don't regulate alcohol, people take advantage of it.
Right, back then, were no food and beverage laws. Well, not in absinthe heyday anyway. Aleister Crowley, British occultist, wrote his most famous work, The Green Goddess, at the old Absinthe house. Notice his very phallic gaze. He was quite a character. And so Yakima, Washington's like a logging town in Washington, and it's amazing that absinthe even found its way there. Get a few drops of absinthe on my fingers, Eddie. The barkeeper did so. He rubbed it to his mustache. I'm going to go call on some ladies and want to take the whiskey odor away.
Oh, God.
Classic cocktails, a Sazerac cocktail. Classic cocktails called frappe. The absinthe frappe. Everybody knows a Sazerac. Basically, it's kind of like, medicinal bitters with a panacea of the 1800s. Everybody believed that, botanical medicine, you take this, ward off sickness. The thing is, you put bitters in whiskey or rum or brandy, whatever it is you're drinking, and then it doesn't taste very good. What makes the medicine go down? Sugar. Sazerac cocktail.
Right. Sazerac originally had cognac. It was that phylloxera that we talked about earlier that switched it over to rye whiskey.
Sazerac de Forge et Fils. And the absinthe frappe was the most popular absinthe cocktail in North America, which is basically absinthe put in a shaker, ice,
With a lot of sugar.
sometimes, yep. Well, or you could aromatize it, you could use all sorts of things, maraschino. I like orange or mint. Anyway, shake it up, served ice cold the days before air conditioning, quite popular. Corpse Survivor #2, see that in Harry Craddock's Savoy cocktail book from 1930. The Corpse Survivor is being the morning after. Let's see. Oh, it was even the equivalent of a hit song in 1904 called Absinthe Frappe on an old Edison wax cylinder. I've heard it, it's pretty ridiculous. But this is it. I'll let a bar play.
When life seems great and dark, the dawn and you are
Okay, all right, I'm good. Anyway, you get the idea.
It was a Broadway show.
It was an operetta that was going around, yeah, and it was in the score.
It's a long time.
Yeah, exactly, yeah, long time. Savoy cocktail book, I tell people if there was, any one cocktail book that you want to be marooned on a desert island with, this is probably the one. It's got like 100 different cocktails called for absinthe. Absinthe use like hot sauce, use like, lots of cocktails. And then there was this big novel, written in French, translated in English, called Wormwood, A Drama of Paris. This was Victorian pulp fiction. You can print so many copies, you can still find like original copies for dirt cheap. Really made absinthe look bad. And then the Temperance League wanted to see absinthe go away, and they were allied with the wine industry, unlikely bedfellows, sponsored artwork that looks like this. And I've seen the original of this, it's fantastic.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Absinthe is death.
Yes.
So they didn't really understand alcoholism. They were calling it absinthism, and they were sending alcoholics to insane asylums to dry out. And when they were dry, they said, "You're cured. Go home and drink wine and beer. It's healthy.
Nice.
Don't drink absinthe though."
Early silent film, same thing, makes absinthe look bad. Character, he becomes an absinthe drinker, his wife leaves him, his life goes to shit, and he wakes up and realizes it's all just a dream, and he goes and takes that bottle of absinthe and throws it off the bridge. The funny thing is, there was a big movement to ban absinthe when there was all these fine products that anybody could buy, like cocaine tooth drops. You've heard of Bayer aspirin. Did you hear of Bayer heroin? It's much more effective for headaches. Cough, the problem has been solved by glycoheroin. This was Ben Mariani. This was a French Bordeaux wine that had coca leaves macerated in it. This was endorsed by His Holiness the Pope. That was the inspiration for Coca-Cola, actually. And I love this one, One Night Cough Syrup, this wholesome product. The ingredients are alcohol, cannabis indica, chloroform, and morphine sulfate. One night, is in one night probably your last night.
Last night,
Oh
right.
my gosh.
Nothing will bother you after that.
But absinthe is the problem, you see.
It kills guinea pigs.
So here's the thing. I say conservatively that 95%, and the figure's probably higher than that, of the world's absinthe came from France and Switzerland. And what I mean along the border, which is pretty much out in the middle of nowhere, there's this town in France I've been to many times. It's called Pontarlier. It's a town of about 10,000 people. In 1900, the population was about 10,000. Nothing changes, but in 1900, it was home to 21 absinthe distilleries in that town. And basically, there was this whole debate that raged on and on and on. Science was too primitive at the time to determine one thing or another. Switzerland banned absinthe in 1910. That knocked out a lot of the market. And then USA banned it in 1912. And France passed the ban in 1914. And then France subsequently banned all high-proof spirits for the duration of the First World War. And every French soldier got a daily ration of wine. Yeah, showing the, absinthe being banned, and then we had this wonderful experiment in the U.S. called Prohibition. It went on for 13 years. Yeah, I don't know what to say to that. And then it is, and go ahead and try the last one. The last one is, which jade is this, Laura? Jade Nouvelle Orleans? Yeah, this is the first absinthe that I began distilling commercially in France in January 2004. It is it's named Nouvelle Orleans after my hometown, New Orleans. It is part vintage absinthe, part me. The core of it is vintage absinthe. It's what I would have distilled had I been alive in the 19th century, and of course I wasn't. But it's during the time that absinthe was gone from the market that all these myths appear about absinthe. And basically, like I said, I became the first person in 2000 to actually analyze antique absinthe. All the top brands in the 19th century, and I found nothing wrong with them. Nothing. Nothing wrong.
So there's a hashtag, Fusion is fake news.
Yeah, right. People tried to hung their hat on that.
They still do.
And the thing is, does anybody see anything wrong with these labels? Look at this. Would you go into a shop and buy a bottle of $50, $60, $80, $90 Bordeaux red wine if you read on the label that it contained FD&C red number 5? Of course you would.
Of course not.
So why would you do this? Because you got something to hide. Because you're not doing it properly.
Right.
But you're going to capitalize on all this sensational bullshit, but what's in the bottle is flavored vodka with green dye. Shameful. Now, some of this has changed, fortunately, because of the power of the internet, but there's still some offenders that are out there. And what was my big change is when I went to France in this place called Saumur in the Loire Valley, visited this place, which has been around since 1834. And if you walk into this building here, it looks like this. And this distillery distilled, these two big alembic stills were from the Pernod Feast distillery, which was the largest producer of absinthe until the distillery, Thompson's Band distillery, was liquidated. And they still function today. I use them. And it's like that. So those of you who have seen earlier today, I've shown you this photo. But this is what an absinthe distillery looked like back in the day. This equipment was intended for that purpose. So it's not something that you see every day, certainly not in the United States.
And they were making 125,000 liters a day of
Right,
absinthe.
and the absinthe industry. Yep. I'm just showing some of the botanicals, some of the steps.
So that's the
And the dirty
green, when we
work.
talk about the green and the absinthe, if it's that neon green, that's not what absinthe
It's,
actually
yeah,
supposed
if it's
to look like.
Fukushima reactor water green, and it stays that way, the thing is, absinthe, the color of absinthe will fade over time,
Mhm.
if it's proper, because it comes from chlorophyll.
Which is why good absinthes are in dark bottles, like you'll see over there.
Yeah, this is the work that gin distillers can't wrap their heads around, how much work goes into this. But let me tell you, it's very labor intensive. Very labor intensive. Any questions? Yes.
When are you gonna reverse engineer chartreuse?
Oh.
Who says I haven't done?
Oh my
You
god.
know, the thing about chartreuse, actually, I did a lot of work with chartreuse. Not with chartreuse, but on chartreuse. I have some interesting opinions about chartreuse, and I happen to like chartreuse. And you know, it's kind of like when the COVID lockdowns happened, and everybody bought up all the toilet paper. You know, it's not that. I mean, things will settle down, and you know, but yeah, everybody, because they heard that once you're capping production volume, everybody ran out and bought it, and it's created some issues.
Yeah,
That
I've been
could
asked
work
to make
itself.
it, too.
Yeah, work itself out. But yes, do I know what's in chartreuse? Yes, I know the core of it, and it's, the thing is, the chartreuse actually has a bit in common with absinthe. But they kept that part secret during the absinthe debates. Yes.
Right.
So I know before you kind of maybe discuss it a little bit, but I know when I was doing research, I guess on absinthe, is there any like maybe well documented proof of, even though it's the bad side of it, like from when they said like people like over drinking it and go like wine or have like psychedelic like elements to it.
You want to talk about it? You want to say something?
Sure.
Side
Well,
properties in it?
Sure. So,
There's the murders.
once you distill wormwood, turns out it's perfectly safe to drink, which is why we say Through Jonas fake news, which is why Ted was able to prove in his chemist lab that there was nothing wrong with it. Absinthe was attacked for its wormwood because that was an easy target. Vermouth and Amaro also contain wormwoods and were never outlawed for that very reason. So it's pretty clear that it's just anti-competitive, anti-absinthe propaganda.
Okay, that's what I was just trying to, if there was any truth behind it or if it was all just
Anybody in here really like gin? Yeah?
Yeah.
In the mid-1700s, there was a big problem in London called the gin craze.
Right.
And Hogarth has these great sketches, and you had Gin Lane and Beer Alley, and everybody in Gin Lane was just wretched and whatever, and beer was a safe thing to drink. Is it because gin was called Mother's Ruin? Is it because gin is poisonous? No, of course not. But when it's been properly made, it sure can be.
Also, if you drink a lot of anything, you're gonna kind of hallucinate.
Well, eventually you'll have problems, but yeah, I mean, but if you're drinking something that had industrial alcohol that was unfit for human consumption, and it was made with artificial green dye from copper sulfate, and contained other things that, are poisonous,
Right.
and the people that drink this tend to be poor alcoholics, and they were the ones that were experiencing the bulk of the problems. The people that had, that people that had money didn't really have so much in the way of problems. Yeah, not nearly as much.
What was the traditional proof of the absinthe?
Well, traditionally, because absinthe naturally gets its color from plants, which is chlorophyll, and because it is a very concentrated product that is never meant to be had neat, good absinthes were always bottled at high proof. So and that range anywhere from, I mean, you can make a good absinthe at 50-something%. That's really not a problem. But when you look at in the old days, going back to stuff and all the way like the export strength, typically they'd range from like 60, 65, 68. 68 was a magic number because it was deemed that at that at that percentage you could keep something indefinitely and it wouldn't change color. And some of the export strength ones were 72.
But you could really have it, like, again, what we said, there's no legal definition of absinthe.
Right.
Right, so all of mine are 55%, because that, for me, was, with my ingredients, my recipes, that was the sweet spot, as far as the palate, the mouthfeel, the louche, the aroma, like all of it, just worked there.
Not the leech.
That's different.
Yes.
So where's the connection here? Because you're over at Lucid, you're doing this thing, you've got.
We're both
Absinthia.
absinthe distillers, we're both obsessed with absinthe, we've both been studying it for, most of our lives.
People that do absinthe properly, they all know each other. And it's kind of like us versus them, us versus the shit sellers.
Right.
And because there's no legal definition, the only edge we have is consumer education, which is why we're here. Yes?
I got a couple points. First, is there any absinthes available now that were making absinthe in like the mid-1800s or pre-ban that resurrected that process? Like to the original recipe, or
there's only, there's really only, not the original products, I'll tell you that. There are a few distilleries that produced absinthe back in the day that are still intact today? Are the products they made exactly the same? No, not really. And you know what that is? That's mostly a fault of record keeping. For example, in the distillery where I work, Combier, they made a blanche, they made a clear absinthe, and they made a green absinthe. They have no record of, as far as the exact recipes. I've helped them recreate something that would have been typical of that region in that period. But no, I mean, but there are a few distilleries that were in operation at that time that distilled absinthe that are today, but just a few.
Is that, well, then a second part of that question. Since you, earlier you talked about how you extracted and analyzed absinthe from pre-banned bottles, is that something that you could partner with one of those old distilleries and recreate their traditional absinthe with?
Yeah, I could, if they want to put that much money into it. It's painstaking work. I was able to do it because I was in that industry being a research scientist. I had my own mass spectrometer. I was able to do that, the type of work that costs. It's really expensive to do. But I had done enough work to where I got the interest of University of Germany and some researchers, and so we partnered and put everything together and made it something that could be published in a scientific peer-reviewed journal. Yeah, which was that was definitive.
Fine. Final question, I promise.
Okay.
From like a bartender and buyer perspective, how can we act as resources to our guests to help them disseminate good absinthe from the bullshit, if you will?
Well, first of all, look on the bar. Look at the bottles that you're buying. Look at the back of the label. Look for something that says contains FD&C yellow number 5, which is a dye made from petroleum,
Or star anise.
and FD&C
Star
blue
anise.
number 1. Yeah, lots of people that use star anise using oil of star anise are not even distilling. The thing is, if you're
Or
having,
Northern Wormwood also, there's a brand using that. That's not the right wormwood.
yeah, you can. I mean, there's like 400. I can't remember, like 400
So many
different
wormwoods.
species of Artemisia,
Yeah.
but only Artemisia absinthium produces absinthe. So basically, yeah, first starts with reading the label. So one good thing about the label is that if you see those dyes, you check what you're buying. Number one. Yeah, if it's described as something like herbal liqueur, which one range of products that is a notorious offender used to have because they put sugar in the bottle. Now I think they backed off enough sugar so that they're able to take that off the bottle. But you still turn the back and it says contains FD&C yellow number 5 and blue number 1.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
Two questions.
Yes.
So, I know they don't have sugar, but I do get some sensation of sweetness.
Yes.
Is that coming from
The anise and the fennel.
green anise?
Green anise and fennel, to a lesser extent, contain something called anethol, which is basically part of what gives it an anisey flavor. But in that, there's some components and products associated. Anyway, there are some things that give it a impression of sweetness, although there's no sugar. Like nothing here that you tasted has any sugar at all, but yet you get an impression of sweetness, and that's
And
just
it lasts too.
yes, yes, it's got a long finish, and that is from the botanicals. So that's one of the interesting things about absinthe. That's one of the reasons why it worked as well as it did in cocktails, because basically it gives that flavor without the sugar, but you still get a slight impression of sweetness. It's
I'm
like you
also
can have a hot
using-
sauce that's a touch fruity.
I'm also using a initial grape distillate, and so some of the sweetness does come from those grapes too.
Yeah, I use an unaged, a custom-made French brandy. I don't know that there's any sweetness that comes through in the finish, but it definitely impacts the mouthfeel. Yes.
Are you sourcing your ingredients from a specific place, and is it consistent?
Well, what I can tell you, and it's taken years to work this out, because of what I do, and I'm about recreating certain original things, I'm sort of bound to certain details that I have to resolve. And one of them is the botanicals I use come from the same places, and in some cases the same fields, as they did to service the absinthe industry at that time. And the thing is, because I work with private growers, I'm able to control certain things. And I know that just like grapes, I can go to Saint-Emilion in France right now, and I can get some Merlot grapes, and I can take them back home to Birmingham, Alabama, and I can grow them. But they are not going to get the same thing. The same thing works with herbs. And all the absinthe herbs, I mean, I've taken some from one place and grown them where I am, and you can see the difference. In some cases, it's an interesting difference. Some cases, it's not a good difference. But terroir matters. Microclimate matters. All these things, they impact. And like I say, what I do, I don't have the flexibility that other distillers do. But it's taken me years to get this. I have to buy botanicals in advance from private growers to get what I use. You use all organic stuff too.
I
so,
do, yeah.
So that's a pain right there.
Yeah, it is,
That's a
absolutely.
pain.
So yeah, I'm sourcing my ingredients from all the same organic farms. Most of them are in Northern California and Oregon.
So
Sometimes
just getting that certification.
when we have fire
is a pain.
seasons, it makes things really tricky, and determining what we want to grow in advance so that we make sure we have enough, to dry and get into the distillate year.
How do you forecast something so esoteric?
Based on previous sales and where you're distributing and who you're expecting to buy it and.
And I've experienced bad years for certain botanicals.
Sure.
So so one of the things is but here's the thing. What I'm doing, I've realized that people 150 years ago, they had to do the same things. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, and now I know why they did things this way because I've experienced, it's like, okay, things I didn't think about, piece of the puzzle fall together. But they thought about these things.
We're in agriculture at the end of the day.
Yeah, it is agriculture.
Yeah.
Yes.
Gin is undergoing a renaissance where we're seeing a lot of producers move away from the traditional styles and getting more experimental.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you see absinthe going? Do you see the same trend happening? What do you think the future looks like for absinthe?
When I started this, I was inspired by all the shit that was on the market because I had multiple original brands. By 2000, I tasted, I don't know, maybe about 20. And I was in a very lonely club of people who knew what vintage absinthe tasted like and were allowed to talk about it. So what inspired me was all the shit that was out there. And what I started with Jade was very simple. Since nobody knew what absinthe was supposed to be, and profiteers were taking advantage of that. What I did, my object, my goal, was to set this straight and create the foundation. And say, here's several brands that I've recreated. And this is what absinthe was. This is what it was. Okay? So when you go back and you look at old cocktail books, things like that, this is the flavor profile they're talking about. This is it. Now, whatever happens after that, okay. The thing is, people say, well, now absinthe in the U.S., why don't you do what you do and just move it to the U.S.? I can't, because I can't get the materials I use there. But that's not the point. The point is that was the whole purpose of Jade, is this is what vintage absinthe was. Now you know. Now, the nice thing about absinthe is just like gin, it has a core flavor, but you can go anywhere in the world and produce it, where it makes sense. And the thing is and people have made variations depending upon regional or what they thought could make it taste interesting, as you know.
Right, so I started with my Blanche and my Verix, and my plan was, 5 minutes, thank you. My plan was to make very traditional Swiss recipes, really, really good absinthe that would help people understand why absinthe was more popular than wine, that it's actually supposed to taste good when it's well made, and then start innovating. Right? And so that's what I'm working on right now. I've got my barrel-aged absinthe and my butterfly pea flower absinthe. I've got other ideas too.
So you have that flexibility like gin. Do they all work? There's some things that I've tasted that even with some historical precedents that I don't think are very good, but that's strictly subjective.
Absolutely.
Just like certain gins, there's certain very popular gins out there. I can tell you, I am not a fan. I don't get it, but that's okay. It doesn't matter. It's not all about me.
Oh, really? And then, just like what we were saying, the absinthe has to be distilled. It has to contain the trinity of
It's all with certain rules.
It has to have all these different things. But once you have that, like the barrel aged and the blue, they're absinthes, right? They may not be rested in the coloring herbs, but either is Blanche traditionally. So they're still absinthes. They're just innovative.
It's like, anybody know Lance Winters, St. George? St. George Beer?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Lance, he they were.
Starting.
Yeah, he was the first. But you know, the thing is, you know, it's not. I mean, it's definitely absinthe. You know that when you taste it, but it's not the tradition. It's not a French flavor profile, which is good for the category.
He doesn't use aniseed.
Yeah. Yes.
Question, kind of confused with the terms, so for, remember the German is Vermut, and then the Latin scientific name is Absinthia?
So the English term wormwood comes from the German word vermut, okay? But that's like saying grape. It's a very generic word.
Exactly.
It's a very generic, it can be applied to lots of different artemisias, whatever. It's a very general catch-all term. So it's a nickname.
Wormwood is a big category of herbs.
Yeah, it doesn't really mean any one thing.
There's mugwort, there's absinthium, there's pontica, there's
Hundreds,
that's-
literally
that's-
hundreds.
yeah.
So Artemisia absinthium is a specific
Species.
Got it.
And even within that, there are different cultivars. And I've grown the same species from two different places in the same field side by side, and you could walk and look at them, and you could see difference. Plant's the same, color was slightly different, and the aroma was slightly different. They're the same, but you like grapes. Every wine grape you know is all Vitis vinifera. But how different is Sauvignon Blanc from Pinot Noir? They're the same species. Different varietals, different, it's the same thing. Yeah, it's a deep rabbit hole.
So wormwood is the fetus vinifera.
Yes,
the
it's of
umbrella
the
category.
Artemisia, yes, world, yes. Of the wormwood, yes. Wormwood is just a generic catch-all nickname. That's some good questions.
Yeah.
It's fun. Yes, go ahead.
Final
Yes.
question.
Go ahead, we got, no.
Sorry. So you were talking about how you're going to do a barrel-aged absinthe, so you got some other things in the fire. So
I have a barrel-aged absinthe over there if you want to try it. Yes.
Love to. So from that side, I think Ted nailed it. Cool. You've recreated historic absinthes and kind of like recreated those. Do you have any plans to do what Absinthia is doing and like innovate absinthes for the modern day and like build on those vintage recipes, or is it just about recreation?
No, no, I let others do that. I've created enough absinthes. I've created 5 Jades, and I created Lucid, and I've done enough in that department. I mean, I've said enough. So the last one I did is Jade Terminus Oxygenate, which was there was a category of absinthes very, very late in the scene called oxygenated absinthes, and there was one in particular that was a very interesting process, and it was deemed that a certain special hot oxygenation process removed all the debatable characteristics or qualities about absinthe that made it safe, and I reproduced that. And that was and that's the last thing I've done, and I'm done. I've said everything I need to say. I've got more than one person can manage as is. So I'll let others do as they do, but I stick straight Franco-Swiss vintage.
Thank you.
Very well. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Yeah.